The Living Zen-podcast is a gift from the members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre to you. If you enjoy it, please be sure to let your friends know about Living Zen. If you'd like to support our community, download the Living Zen-podcast app for iPod, iPhone, and Android. One of the most meaningful ways to show your support is by becoming a part of our Sangha as an associate. Your commitment of $10 a month will ensure that offerings like the Living Zen podcast and our online e-Zendo will continue to be available around the world to everyone with an interest in truly living Zen. To become an associate, please visit our website at zenwest.ca and click on Become an Associate. Many more Zen Talks are available for purchase on iTunes and Amazon.com. Just search for Venerable Eshu Martin. These talks are also available for free on our website to all members and associates of the Victoria Zen Centre. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.
Yeah, but more so, there seems to be this idea that we have control over. I can't describe it any better than you can paint your own sunset. How it was described to me. Right. So you can paint your own sunset. Is sort of one thought, and the other thought is give up control over.
Can't there be a middle ground?
I think they're both simultaneous. I think that, and it's partly what I was talking about tonight, is that this, we very much live in this, there's a monk, a Theravadan monk who comes to town occasionally, though not so much anymore because his mother was here and she died, so I don't know if he can get permission to get out of the monastery anymore. But he was talking about how we sort of go through life. And what I was talking about tonight is kind of this, the way that we fixate ourselves in situations and experiences around ourselves. We make them objects. We say, I want to get this job and I'll be happy, or I want to get that girl and I'll be happy, or I want to have that car and I'll be happy, or I want to have this much money and I'll be happy. And so all those things become objects, including happiness and including myself. They all become objects. And so this sort of way of perceiving the world is sort of in direct conflict with how the world actually is. So all of those things, that situation, that object even, that experience, that education, they're all not objects, they're activities, right? And I'm an activity as well. And so whenever we sort of engage in that kind of relationship with the world or with situations, the metaphor that this monk friend of mine said is like, it's like there's this big stone boulder that's rolling down a hill. And like if we just step back and look, we can see that there's a big stone boulder rolling down the hill. But our tendency is to sort of get in front of it and say, I don't want it to roll down the hill. And the results of that behavior are inevitable and are constantly being experienced. We say, I don't want that to happen, and it's happening, and, we're just a little thing. So, the first point in talking about this is understanding that how we perceive things, actually what you're asking about, this whole idea of, I have to kind of take a little detour. What you're talking about, this idea of we paint our own experience. This is Yogacara. This is the mind-only school of Buddhism, which is a really kind of I'm not going to talk about that too much tonight because it's way out there kind of Buddhism. But when we're talking about let go in Buddhism or in Zen, when we're talking about letting go of something, like letting go of control. We're not talking about like just like taking your hands off of the steering wheel of your life and just kind of like, oh, whatever, like, oh, sure, I'll eat that and I'll drink that and I'll do that because it doesn't matter. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is letting go of that perception of things as object. It's like I talk to there's a lot of people that are involved in business in the Zen Center. And one of the things that we often talk about is like the practice of strategic planning. Okay? So strategic planning is this process through which you clarify a direction and a set of goals, and you start to move your organization, or you can do personal strategic planning. You start to move your personal life in the direction of that goal. But the goal is not a solid thing, and the path is not a solid thing, and you're not a solid thing. And if you are rigid in your planning, or if you're rigid in the way that you're sort of trying to adhere to a path in life, it's going to create suffering because it's in conflict with the way that things actually are. It's a direction, it's an intention, it's a momentum, but it's got to move, it's got to be alive. And so when we're talking about letting go in Zen, or letting go in practice, or letting go of control in your life, it's letting go of that need that we have, that our own insecurity creates in us, or gives rise to in us, where we feel like we have to know every step along the way before it happens clearly, what it's going to look like and how it's going to play out, that leads directly to exactly the situation that we want to have. So when we're talking about letting go, I can just say, like, how does that work out for you? Like, we all do that. We all sort of have that sort of like, oh, I want it to go like this, and if it doesn't, we're unable to see what possibilities may have arisen from that situation that's at all different from what we wanted it to be, because we're so like fixed with that didn't go the way that I wanted it to. So when we're letting go, when we're able to let go, we say, I'm aiming there, and so we ended here. Now, where's Yushin? Just like sort of what happens when these little jobs that we have are always so great because they're like really simple. It's like walk into the room, bow with everybody, carry the incense to the front, and ring the bell. And like you get, CEOs and highly competent nurses and really, psychotherapists and things like that do really complex stuff. But you'd be amazed at how many times you can screw up in that little process. And what happens, because we're standing out in the hall and we make this picture in our head. This is what I need to do. This is how it's going to happen. You step in the door and you bow and nobody else bows. And you're in this situation where the plan, it's already, we're off the rails of the plan, right? And then we see what happens within us is that either you let go and you start to live, or you are trying to pull that sucker back onto the plan, to the track, right? The problem is it's a dynamic activity. So meanwhile, you're trying to do this, and you're also missing the next thing that's happening because you're busy in the past trying to sort of pull it back on. So what we're doing in Zen practice, this talking about the sort of letting go, just sort of letting go into things, is letting go of not the responsibility that you have for your life, but with your obsession with controlling every aspect of everything that you do all the time. And sort of, to sort of break it down into really sort of vernacular, it's like just going with the flow, rolling with it, It's like, so you bow and somebody says, wait a minute, like, do you go like, oh shit, like now I'm a bad person and oh, I did a poor job and now all these new people think I'm an idiot and then it's like, and then the person beside you going, time to ring the bell, and you're like, oh, and it just sort of gets worse and worse. And most of us live our whole lives like that, in this like constant state of apologizing for all the things that we've screwed up, instead of just like rolling with it, The other side that you're talking about, where you are painting your own, I think it's the other side of that. What happens when you do let go? What happens when you this koan is popping into mind. I don't. Anyways, when we let go of that control, then the whole experience changes. There's a great, I can't remember which jazz player said it, but he said, like, there are no mistakes. It's all improvisation. And that's the nature of life. When we realize that, when we come to this realization that, like, I didn't make a mistake, I improvised there a little bit, your experience of how your life progresses becomes a lot more creative. Instead of trying to operate, I use a lot of sort of theatrical sort of metaphors. Instead of trying to operate within a script or always trying to do some kind of, like, run your life like it's a piece of repertory theater, like it's been done before and you need to sort of live up to it, it's like it's never been done and it's never been acted and it's never been lived, because it's a totally dynamic activity. So you have this, what we're all learning to do here is improvise. What we're all learning to do is to live completely in this moment. You know, we walk into this moment of our lives, we're on a direction, we're headed towards something. Maybe we're getting an education, or we're trying to pursue a particular career, and that's all nice. It gives us a sort of direction, a momentum. But you've got to play in the moment. You've got to live your life in what's going on right now, and that's where we get into sort of the creativity of creating your own reality. What you're sort of pointing at with this, painting your own sunset, this is sort of like having completely let go of this fixation, having completely allowed the separation between subject and object to dissolve, realizing completely, experientially, that all things in this cosmos are fundamentally one. They arise from a single origin. How you perceive things and how you interact with things fundamentally changes. And that's a bit of a heavier topic. So I'd kind of, I don't want to scare new people. But one of the sort of really, one of the really great sort of Mahayana Buddhist texts that sort of talks about this stuff is called the Lankavatara Sutra. And a good translation was just like published. There's only one translation really in English before this, and a new one was put out like last October or something like that. And I'm just, I read the old one and I'm reading this new one, and it's just, it gets pretty slippery pretty fast to talk about that kind of stuff. I don't want to, that's good. I'll leave it there. Because it's like, the fundamental point of Zen practice is to really investigate this stuff through your own life. So to have those questions is really great. To say to yourself, is it letting go, or is it creating my own reality? And through practice, to experiment with those, to find out how those things are manifested and what is authentic and clear. That's practice. Those are koans. So for me to talk about them is just trying to like share my dinner with you. Like I ate it. I can talk about it, but I won't help you any. So it's, that's a nicer way of the other one. The other one that I've heard is like, I can't so much as fart for you. So, yeah. So, yeah. Just keep sitting with it. Yeah. Any other questions? Easier ones, hopefully? No.
I don't know if it is easier. But when the whole concept of there's no self or there's no self. I guess no self I can handle myself being an activity, being a constant activity. And being a biologist, I guess I can see myself as I'm an activity. Mm-hmm. But this teacup or a rock, and even my body in a sense as an activity versus an object, it's both to me. It's intuitively, this is an object that can be used in many activities, and it was an activity to make it. It was an activity, it slowly deteriorates.
Yeah.
But it's still an object.
Yeah. Yeah, no, this is...
And that I think, so often in texts and in talks, there seems to be a level of woo-woo-ness when talking about everything. There is no self. When I think of my body, and I'm like, no, that's a self. I'm here.
Thank you. It's a question that comes up over and over and over and over and over again.
I think that so often gets me, at least.
It's
I feel like it's being kind of...
Yeah, no, and it's like everything from The Simpsons to Deepak Chopra, tweets, like
Yeah. No,
dealing with this teaching, Anatman. So, the idea that a lot of people have when they talk about Buddhism and this whole idea of no self is, and it's a dangerous one actually, is that there is no such thing as a self. And the sort of, whenever someone sort of really sort of presses that and says, oh, there's no self anyway, so, whatever. I always say, okay, I want you to stand on the street and manifest no self with that approaching bus, because we'll talk about selves. So the teaching isn't that like individuality or distinct manifestation doesn't exist. That's not the teaching. And that's not the problem.
Manifestation being... I'm trying to sort of simplify the language.
Okay.
An object. This teacup as an object. Versus as an activity.
Okay. So the basic teaching is that objects arise as a result of causes and conditions and dissolve when the causes and conditions cease themselves. That in each and every thing in the world, there is no characteristic about it that you can withdraw from its component bits that is it. They're all elements and components in transition.
I've asked you this question.
Many people, tons of people ask this question all the time. Yeah, no, and I think it is in a lot of ways the fundamental point of Buddhism is that we live and we perceive and we make relationship as if there is something in this cup which is cupness other than all of its component bits. Like if I could smash this into a powder, somehow there would be like cupness, And we treat ourselves like that. Like if we took us all apart. This is one of the most astonishing things when you really see a dead body, is that like all of those things come together in a situation and in a circumstance, and all the component bits make up this thing that we give a name to. And as soon as we give that thing a name, it becomes solid in our mind. But that solidity is an illusion, and that's the fundamental sort of point. And that we go around in our lives and in our relationships and in this world behaving as if that's real. And that's where suffering arises. We take ourselves as real, and we compare ourselves to other things that we take as being real, and immediately we start to do this whole greater or lesser thing, and then all of a sudden we've got, craving and aversion because we want things that are going to make us a bigger, better thing more than that thing, or we want to avoid the stuff that makes us a diminished thing in comparison to that thing. No, really, this is that whole sort of model, and we spend our whole lives pursuing this stuff, all based on this idea that we're a thing, which, when we actually take the time to investigate it, is delusional, right? And that's why this chant says, investigating the fundamental activity of self, the activity of self, recognizing that what we are is constantly being created and constantly being destroyed, and everything around us is constantly in the process of being born and constantly in the process of dying. It's like, that's life, right? So, does that help? Yeah. So it's like, the metaphor that's always being used is the ocean, right? Like there are these waves that arise and the waves diminish, and we can talk about waves, but sort of when you step back, you go like what's a wave? Like, can you take the wave out of the ocean? Like, how do you do that? So,
there's sound waves and...
I'm just talking about water waves. Yeah, but like, where is it? It's also an activity, right? Exactly. You can't go, got the wave.
Thanks for listening to the Living Zen podcast. If you follow Living Zen through iTunes, I would very much appreciate it if you would take a moment to let me know what you think about it by rating or reviewing the podcast, so that new listeners can also hear what you have to say. Thank you for your time and for your support.